Today, super is no free lunch. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to the latest post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. There was an important article published on Livewire by Anthony Doyle from Fidelity International, and it makes the point that there is a critical connection between the rise in the value of forced savings into superannuation at 9.5% currently and the rise in household debt that we are seeing today. Now, this should not be any surprise at all, given that obviously if households are putting 9.5% of their income into superannuation for retirement, they have 9.5% less to save for a house or to spend. And as a result, there is a strong correlation between household debt and superannuation balances. Australians have been making compulsory superannuation contributions since 1992. Today, there is around $2.75 trillion in retirement savings in superannuation funds. And as a result of the accumulation and growth of these savings pools, Australia now has the fourth largest pension market in the world. On the other side of the balance sheet, Australians also have the second highest level of household debt to GDP in the world at around 120% of GDP. Household debt has grown in nominal terms from $217 billion in June 1992 to almost $2.5 trillion today. Total superannuation assets and household debt have grown at a similar rate since 1992, suggesting that the superannuation saved by Australians has largely been offset by increased borrowing. It appears that the knowledge that most Australians have a pool of money waiting for them in retirement has resulted in Australians becoming more comfortable with accumulating higher levels of debt during their working lives. And lower interest rates and increases in household incomes and higher house prices have also contributed to the run-up in debt seen over the past 27 years. Looking forward, the RBA's 3 interest rate cuts have enabled Australia's property market to stage a remarkable turnaround. After falling 10% from October 2017, house prices are now only 3% from being back to a record. And it shows that monetary policy still works in Australia, and ultimately lower interest rates are intended to encourage businesses and households to borrow, and higher home prices mean that Australians in general will be required to accumulate more debt should they seek to buy a property. And this has been confirmed by housing finance data showing that the value of owner-occupied housing loans is 20.5% higher than at its trough back in May 2019. And whilst higher house prices will likely stimulate the economy in the short run, as households feel wealthier and spend, higher debt may prove to become a headache for the RBA in the longer run, as households typically react to a negative shock like a loss of income or rising interest rates by cutting spending sharply in order to maintain their mortgage payments. In fact, the RBA acknowledged this tacitly. If you have to save more through super, you might save less voluntarily, and therefore your consumption doesn't move. And trumpeting how much money is in accounts labelled superannuation ignores the overall balance sheet. In a recent article by Richard Dennis, chief economist at the Australian Institute, he wrote that much is made of the enormous size of Australia's $2.9 trillion superannuation savings, but we talk much less about the fact that the only reason it grew so big is that we have literally forced the vast majority of employees to spend 9.5% of their income buying superannuation every week. Let's be clear. If we forced all Australians to get a massage every week or to buy a new Australian car every year, we would have an enormous massage and car industry as well. In the topsy-turvy land of superannuation, in which taxpayers give the most assistance to those who need it least and no assistance to those who need it most, over the course of their lives, most Australians lucky enough to be in the top 1% of income earners will receive over $700,000 in taxpayer contributions to their personal superannuation account, while those in the bottom 10% will receive less than $50,000. Now, of course, tax concessions for superannuation aren't the only form of public assistance for retirees. There's the age pension as well, but while the age pension is capped at $24,268 a year for singles, there is no cap on the lifetime value of taxpayer support for superannuation. And there are people with tens of millions of dollars in their superannuation funds who receive millions of dollars worth of tax concessions each year. The lifetime cost of taxpayer support for wealthy retirees' concessions is enormous and growing rapidly. But when it comes to explaining the budget deficit, it's more likely that those on meagre unemployment benefits will get the blame. It costs twice as much to give tax concessions to the top 10% of income earners as it would cost to simply pay them the age pension and scrap tax concessions for super. Plus, of course, the fees for managing superannuation and bigger mortgages line the pockets of the bankers, and yet super investors are taking all the investment risks. So in my view, this whole superannuation edifice is a busted flush. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.